Hi, I'm Joel Potter. I'm the sole owner of a studio called Studio Primitive. Um, Started the studio last year, and we're making a game called Attack of the Karens. Um, yeah, that's pretty much my introduction. I got into indie development about a year and a half ago. Started just learning some things in Unity and doing some playing around with that engine. Really, though, I started my passion for game development back when I was a kid. I used to draw up my own levels and that kind of thing for Mega Man games and come up with my own Mega Man villains, and draw them on pieces of paper with my brothers, and we'd color them and that kind of thing. And it was tons of fun, and it just kind of made me wonder at what I could create if I knew how to make a video game. And back then, you had to have a lot of money or you had to have really serious programming skills to do anything in the game industry. And I knew I'd never get there as a kid, so I went into normal things and went to school, became an engineer, and then just last year I started to think about making video games again as a potential side business, and so I learned how to do Unity and I learned C Sharp, and I started making some games, and I made a couple of small games on itch.io and put those out, and now I'm taking a stab at my first commercial game, which is Attack of the Karens.
So, in a nutshell, what kind of game are we talking about?
So, Attack of the Karens, in a nutshell, is the really quick way to describe it is a 2D horizontal scrolling shmup or shoot 'em up. Kind of that classic arcade type game like Gradius or R Type, where you're flying and the screen scrolls horizontally, and you move up and down and you shoot your blasters to take out enemies. And this one's a bit of a twist because it's got a bullet hell mechanic, which a lot of modern shmups have. So it gets pretty crazy sometimes, and the player has to use some pretty quick reflexes to dodge some bullets and avoid some threats. And there's also a very heavy Karen culture inside the game. So I'm taking the meme Karen, which is a popular meme on the internet about spoiled, entitled 40-year-old white women, usually, typically, and making fun of them. And so the game basically is these Karens have become mutated and they become these evil cyborgs and they're taking over your city, and you're playing a pilot that has to fly and destroy them and stop their army.
What inspired you to make Attack of the Karens?
So it's kind of a silly start to the game, really. Like when I was developing my Twitter account, I was making some small games. I made a small game called Kamikaze Squirrels, which is a game where you play a farmer and you shoot these squirrels with dynamite on their backs running towards your apple tree, and you have to blow them up before they get there. And it's just a small 2-minute game. And then I did a game jam game um, called Brobit in Virus Land, where you play a computer chip and you bounce around a mainframe and going to different nodes to finally get to the CPU and to get rid of a virus. And I was done with those two, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do next. So I put a poll on Twitter and I said, what kind of game would you like me to make? Would you like me to make a Game Boy shmup? Would you like me to make a Karen slapping simulator? Or would you like me to make some other kind of game? I don't remember what the third option was, but the responses came back even on a Game Boy game, a Game Boy shmup, and Karen slapping simulator. So I kind of put the Karen slapping simulator out there as a joke, but people voted for it. So since people voted for the shmup and the Karen game evenly, I decided to combine them, and so I made a shmup about Karens. That's where it came from. And so since then, it's been pretty fun to dig into this. People really seem to like it a lot, and then yeah, I'm having so much fun just coming up with fun ideas and kind of not taking it too seriously and just getting a little bit silly with the game at sometimes.
You went with a popular topic, like the Karen memes. They are popular like around the world. So,
Yeah, it was kind of fortunate. I didn't really intend to do that. I just, like I said, thought of it as a joke, having some kind of Karen slapping game. But then people seem to really respond to it. People really latch on to the Karen idea because I think everybody's had an experience with a rude, entitled woman at one point who wants to speak to the manager, you know, kind of just that type of person. And so I think people relate to it a little bit. And yeah, it's just kind of something to have fun with that. And I think people will enjoy it.
What makes Attack of the Karens a different game from other games?
Obviously, there's the Karen influence that kind of sets it apart from other games. I don't know of another Karen attacking game, but the fact I am planning a couple of different mechanics for the game. So in shmups, there's a bunch of different mechanics that people have tried, such as bullet grazing, harvesting bullets, and those kinds of things. And one that's particularly inspiring to this game is Zero Ranger. And so I'm taking a lot of ideas from Zero Ranger and kind of making them my own. And one thing that's kind of new that I haven't seen in another shmup that I'm planning for this game is when you destroy an enemy, they give off debris, and you can use a beam on your ship to harvest that debris and kind of use it as a shield and deflect it back against enemies. So that's something that I'm developing that I hope will work out well for the final game. Still have to test it and still have to put it in there, but I think it's possible, and I think it'll be a cool twist for a shmup.
Yeah, it does sound like something quite unique. I don't see the option to shield from the debris from your enemies often.
Yeah.
For how long have you been working on this project?
So I started this project in January this year. That's when I put out the Twitter poll to decide what kind of game to make, and that's when the responses came back. So yeah, I've been working on it pretty much daily since then. I work every night or morning, except Sundays. I take Sundays off just to be with my family. So pretty much solid every day since January I've been working on this.
And for how long will it be in development after this?
Oh, that's a tough question to answer. It's just barely getting going. I'm developing some of the assets. I'm trying to get a demo together, but I envision 2022 sometime being the release date. I know it's a really big window, but I can't quite nail it down. I would say, to be safe, end of 2022 is when it should be fully released.
Are you using Unity? I mean, you were learning Unity, so...
Yeah, Unity's the engine that I'm using. I did toy with the idea of using some other ones, Godot or Game Maker, but in the end I just decided to go with Unity because I'd already done tutorials on that and I knew it pretty well, and so yeah, it's proved to be a pretty good engine for this project.
Did you encounter any setbacks during the project, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, there are some setbacks. So there's things, learning curves that you go through, especially with this being my first project. There was a lot to learn about state machines when I'm programming different enemies and different bosses. That's always a challenge because I want the boss to act a certain way, and I want the game to feel a certain way. And to get there, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot more time than I thought it would take. But I think it's worth it because the feel that you get once the game looks right and once it feels juicy and feels good to the player, that's worth it for sure to get there. So that's one of the challenges I've had is to learn how to do that, to how to get to that point to where the game feels crisp and feels good and feels fun to play. And another one is just scheduling. I mean, I thought this would be a very small project. I thought it would be a very quick, easy itch.io game, and then the scope expanded, and I wanted to do a full commercial release, and so that really added on a lot of content that I had to do, that added on a lot of new assets that I had to make, programming and that kind of thing, because I wanted it to be really fun. I saw that people were really kind of enjoying the idea, and so I wanted to make it bigger. I wanted to make it an opportunity for myself to have a little bit of success commercially, and also to have something that people would really enjoy playing and want to purchase. So I'd say those two things probably were my biggest challenges: learning curves as far as programming, and then just some scope creep. And I think a lot of indie developers experience scope creep, and I've tried to limit it as much as I can, but really it's hard to do that when you have these really good ideas and you have these awesome things you want to put in the game, and you know people are going to love it and they're going to respond well. You just want to put it in there, and you got to figure out how to do it. So that does take some time.
If you can advise a new or young indie game developer, what will you tell them?
I would say start small. That's a big thing that I learned early on. My first game I wanted to try, even before I'd done my own game at all, was a Metroidvania. I wanted to make this really cool Metroidvania that was hours long and had all these different areas and different weapon combinations, and was a roguelike game. And I wanted to just, put my dream game out there, and I realized that I don't have the chops to do that. And if I were to try and do that, I would end up making the game 2 or 3 times over again, because I would learn so much at the first in terms of my art skills and programming skills that I would redo the game all over again. And so I just decided, well, I'm going to make a couple of very small itch.io games, which were Brobit and Virus Land and Kamikaze Squirrels. And then I moved on to a slightly larger game, which is Attack of the Karens. And Attack of the Karens is really only going to be 4 stages, 4 bosses. Maybe a little bit more if I decide to do a DLC later on or something, or add an update. But that's the core of the game, is going to be 4 encounters with 4 different bosses. And I think that's a good scope for me right now for where I'm at in game development. I don't know if I would be able to handle more than that. I'd probably get discouraged and want to give up. But yeah, I would say the biggest piece of advice is know your limits and know what you can do. Because if you try to do something that's just way bigger than what your skills are, it's going to take you a long time to learn. And more often than not, you'll just end up giving up.
What do you think about the current marketing strategies in the indie game industry?
So that's something I've put a lot of time in studying into, is marketing strategies. And I'm still learning a lot. So I don't know how much I can speak about knowing what the current market industry trends are, but one thing that people are really pointing to a lot is new platforms to try and advertise your game on, to get your game out there. And the Steam algorithm is changing so much that it's really trying to limit indie games that are seen as cheap or seen as asset flips. And the bar for success on Steam is raising, because there's so many new indies coming out and new indie projects that it's really hard to get your game on the new and trending tab inside Steam. And that's really where you want to be. And so a lot of marketing efforts that I've been focusing on, and people that I know focus on, is trying to get to that tab, which basically means building your wish lists up as much as you can, and then trying to convert as many of those as you can on your release date. And that really just comes down to daily marketing, weekly marketing on social platforms, getting people to notice your game, having a good hook so people get interested in your game, and then having them act on your game and wish list it, or join your mailing list, or join your Discord, and hopefully those will convert into sales. And a lot of people have been trying new platforms. A lot of indies I know are trying TikTok and seeing what works there. I haven't done really that much on TikTok. I put a couple of videos out there, but I haven't really dived into it much. And a lot of indies are looking beyond Twitter to kind of get their name out there. Instagram is a popular one for me right now. I'm getting a few followers on there. It's just started, but I seem to resonate on there really well. I think it's because of the pixel art. People like to look at that. And so there's an opportunity there. People have tried Imager. And the last couple of years, Discord's really kind of been growing a lot in terms of building a good community and building a support for your game. And you kind of interact with this fan base that you have, and you can kind of treat them as your core supporters, and they get really loyal to you, and then you can hopefully maybe even rely on them to go out and do some promotion for your game, or to spread the word about your game. And so Discord's been a been an interesting one that's been coming up too.
Yeah, Discord is great for promoting your indie game.
Yeah, we just started our server a few days ago, and it's been a lot of fun putting that together. And you can do a lot of cool things inside of Discord. I mean, I set up a Me6 bot so you can have different roles assigned to people, and as they interact more on the server, they get experience and they level up, and that those higher levels get them access to things like early testing and alpha or beta tests. And if they get high enough, they can even come inside the development team chat and see what we're talking about and contribute ideas and that kind of thing. So yeah, Discord it's a really cool place to build a community and to build energy and excitement about your game. And I think the more you put into that, the more energy and the more power there is behind your release when you finally do it, because you have all these people that are so excited and so ready to purchase the game that it just builds up a lot of tension. And I think that's really good for your release.
Yeah, the reward for chatting is pretty interesting because you are letting people that chat a lot look into what you're talking about as developers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's a little bit of risk to that, kind of having them come in and talk to the dev team. But I think if somebody's that dedicated and that supportive of the game, it's the same as somebody being a really big Kickstarter supporter. And people do rewards for that as in terms of contributing a boss idea or contributing some other kind of idea to help develop the game. And so I don't see why you shouldn't do that with somebody in Discord who's always in there, always talking to you, always asking about your game, always chatting with the other people in there, and really building your community to be something interesting and to be someplace that people really want to be. If they're that level of dedicated, they should be able to, have a little bit of fun with it and be able to be rewarded a little bit.
Indeed. Where do you see the indie game market going in a few years?
I see lots more competition coming, and I think it's going to get more and more stiff. I think the game industry has been, how do you say it? So many people are able to get into it right now. Engines are getting more user friendly. There's a lot more options where you don't even need to know code, and you can make these really awesome games. And so I think the bar for making indie games, the bar for entry, is getting lower and lower. And there's a lot more people that are wanting to come in and do it, especially with the pandemic where people have lost their jobs, lost their incomes. They're looking to something like this to be able to replace that. And so there's going to be a lot more releases, and there's going to be a lot more bad games out there, I guess. And so there's going to be a lot of people that are going to roll their eyes at indies, and you need to be somebody who can really stand out, who can really show that they're good at what they do, that they know how to design a good game, and that they know how to design a fun game. I really think it's going to come down to, is the game high quality? Is the gameplay there? Are the bugs gone? Is the artwork really top notch? People are going to get really stiff on judging indie games and making sure that they're worth even the few dollars that it takes to buy one.
Did you do any game development education in school, or did you learn the whole development process on your own?
So I went to school for mechanical engineering. I graduated in 2016, and I learned a lot of coding in high school, or not high school, in college. It was C++, but that knowledge translated really well over into C#. So I already knew things like code structures, if statements, for loops, all those kinds of things that are kind of just the fundamental building blocks of coding. And so that helped me a lot. And looking back, I had done things like a little bit of artwork and sketching that had kind of taught me a little bit, which I use in game development. So I didn't get any specific game development education, but I took what I learned over the years, and I put those into my game development, you could say. So yeah, that's pretty much my background as far as education goes.
Okay, then we are now at the final question, and this could be an easy one for you or a very hard one. It really depends on the person. What is your favorite video game of all time, and why?
My favorite video game of all time is Earthbound on the Super Nintendo. And the reason that is because I had such good memories playing that game. And it really connected and resonated with me when I was a kid when it first came out. And I got the game for Christmas and I put it in my Super Nintendo and I didn't stop playing it until I was done. It was a really cool, interesting RPG that was different from all the other games back then. And back then it was like Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, Chrono Trigger. Those kinds of games were dominating, and Earthbound came out. And Earthbound was about a kid who was in just some small town in America that had a baseball bat. And he went around and he bought hamburgers to heal himself, and you had teddy bears that would take damage for you. You rode a bicycle, you fought aliens. Totally different from what the rest of the RPGs were doing back then. I mean, back then all the RPGs were swords and shields and dragons and spells and that kind of stuff. And Earthbound had psychic energy, and it was just completely different. And that was really interesting to me. And I have always loved that game since. I think it has a really funny, quirky sense of humor, which I would try to do in my own games too. I think that's added a lot of charm to that game and made it really timeless, as well as the pixel art is top notch. I really like the way that they did that game, and so it's been very inspiring to me. That's a pretty easy one for me to answer. Another one that I really like is Super Metroid, in terms of a Metroidvania. That game, I can always play through it and I can always really enjoy it. I always just love the exploration of it, even though I know exactly where everything is. It's the boss fights are really fun. Um, Getting new gear, getting new suits and new weapons is really fun for me. And then I know you said just one, but I got to share one more game that I really like, and this is an indie game that inspired me to get into indie game development. And Hyper Light Drifter is probably my favorite indie game of all time, and that's just because of the aesthetic and the feel of the game. And I really appreciate how they can tell a story without using any dialogue. It's just all pictures, and the music by Disaster Piece in that game is truly just amazing and creates an awesome atmosphere. So there you go. You have three of my favorite games.
Well then, well, we don't have any questions anymore. So, is there other things you want to say?
Yeah, just one more thing about Attack of the Karens that we're trying to do to kind of set it apart from the competition is I hired a couple of voice actors to do some voices for the game, and this is an aspect of the game that I'm super excited about. We hired a voice actor to do a character that guides you along your missions. She's an Air Force lieutenant. Her name's Amanda, and then we have another voice actor that's going to voice the different Karen bosses. And I feel like this is a really big, fun part of the game where you're going to see these real dominant personalities come out from these Karens and really kind of go back and forth between the Karen dialogue and Amanda's dialogue. And I think that'll add an interesting aspect to the game and one that I'm really excited about. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Are the Karens actually voiced by someone named Karen? Because that would be hilarious.
No. The voice actor that does the Karens, her name's Kelsey, and the voice actor that does Amanda, her name is Abby, and they're both awesome and great to work with.
Well, I'm glad they are at least great, but it would have been really funny if the person that did the Karens was actually named Karen.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
But yeah, you can't choose great people on their name.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that was it then. I want to thank you for your time for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great. Thank you for reaching out and for noticing the game and supporting it. We're really excited about this and looking forward to listening to the interview.
Great.